Hello and welcome to the Sleuth booth, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. As you probably read in my description of the channel, you know, we're not just looking at one particular subject. We're going to look at a whole range of subjects, and I thought I'd do something a little bit different today. I will be catching up on those that we've been, you know, trying to find from our missing list. Those that I've spoke about in other videos and others that I've found on Twitter. I will do more videos of that, but today we're going to be looking at this story here. This is really interesting. Now, I've heard this story told to me by a couple of YouTubers, but I just found this on here on the internet. This is on pt.1. And basically this story is known as the Watcher, or the Watcher House, the Watcher House story, which is what I've named this video, the Watcher House story. And basically it's about a family who've bought their dream home, and it just gets turned into an absolute nightmare via this stalking situation, is the best way to put it. But quite... at some points, I found, in some ways, I found the methods used to be quite weird, like almost as if I'd take it. At first, I think it would humour me, and I'll explain more as I go on. But we'll get into this. But it does get really eerie, like strange. So anyway, this is a brilliant write-up from thecut.com, and this was posted on November 19th 2018. The actual event started, I believe, in 2014. 2014. But I'll read into it and I'll stop, and then, you know, I can have a little speculate or whatever. And but here we go. This is the Watcher House. The Watcher family bought their dream home, their dream house, but according to the creepy letters they started to get, they weren't the only ones interested in it. So this was written by Reeves Wideman, artwork by Gerald Sleuth. So the first part here, like, we'll start here. One night in June 2014, Derek Broaders had just finished an evening of painting at his new home in Westfield, New Jersey. When he went outside to check the mail, Derek and his wife Maria had closed on the 6-bedroom house at 657 Boulevard 3 days earlier, and were doing some renovations before they moved in. So there wasn't much in the mail except a few bills and a white card-shaped envelope. It was addressed in thick, clunky handwriting to the new owner, and the typed note inside began warmly: "Dearest new neighbour at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighbourhood." So on that first part, obviously, you know, when you read that, you're expecting it to be one of your neighbours. You know, you think, well, one of the neighbours is probably just welcome to the neighbourhood. Maybe there's an invitation in there to, you know, go and say hi sometime or whatever, or have coffee and get to know each other. Who knows? You know, it could just be a warm-in. That's the first thing that will cross most people's minds. That opening line there is that this is just going to be like a welcoming from a neighbour. But if we go down to the next part here. For the Broaderses, buying 657 Boulevard had fulfilled a dream. Maria was raised in Westfield, and the house was a few blocks from her childhood home. Derek grew up working class in Maine, then moved his way up the ladder at an insurance company in Manhattan to become a senior vice president with a salary large enough to afford the $1.3 million house. Sorry, I nearly said pounds. The Broaderses had bought 657 Boulevard just after Derek celebrated his 40th birthday, and their 3 kids were already debating which of the house's fireplaces Santa Claus would use. But as Derek kept reading the letter from his new neighbour, it took a turn. "How did you end up here?" the writer asked. Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? The letter went on. Now, already, like, you know, just telling you there that this letter, this is the bit that, when I read this to you, this is the bit that made me think, like, okay, that first one would humour me. Like, I would be like, what absolute clown in this area sent me this? So the letter reads, 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. So straight away, yeah, you're thinking, okay, there's a loony in the area. There's some really sick teenagers in the area. There's a worst case scenario. There's a very weird, creepy stalker in the area. But you don't know, do you? I mean, but I would still at this point think someone is really pissed that I bought this house. That's the first thing I think. Someone around here, I mean, he's just had his 40th birthday, so let's just imagine your neighbours are, I don't know, in their 70s. You're just a noisy, young, fucking home, street wrecking. You know, they might be sitting there thinking, no, this has always been a quiet neighbourhood. Now it's going to get loud, so let's just freak them out. So they move, they sell up and go. But you don't know. Like, that's how I would take it. I just think, oh yeah, it's just because I'm 40, innit? It's because I'm 40 and I'm successful, you don't like me. So the author's reconnaissance had apparently already begun. The letter identified the Broadus' Honda minivan as well as the workers renovating a home. I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. The person wrote, bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. Earlier in the week, Derek and Maria had gone to the house and chatted with their new neighbours while their children, who were 5, 8 and 10 years old, ran around the backyard with several kids from the neighbourhood. The letter writer seemed to have noticed, you have children, I have seen them. So far I think there are 3 that I have counted. The anonymous correspondent wrote, before asking if there were more on the way. So he's seen the kids. So he knows he's got 3 kids. I mean, to be honest with you, you don't really need to be tremendously stalky. If stalky for a word, you don't have to be that weird creep. I mean, let's just say, someone was to move into a house across the street from me here. I wouldn't have to be stalking them to notice, oh, they've got 1 or 2 kids there, or they've got, oh look, I saw them all getting out the car, the family car, mum, dad, and there was 3 kids, So it would be a safe assumption more than, oh, he's stalking me, So, but still, an anonymous letter from somebody who's completely weirded you out this far, talking about your kids is a whole different ball game altogether. So another part of the letter says, do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Now that's the part where it becomes from weird, funny little man writing me weird letters, or now you're talking fight talk, because you've just referred to my kids as young blood that you requested. Requested for what? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family, or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Now, that straight away, the whole ball game changes. I mean, for any dad knows that's fight talk. You know, you're threatening the kids now in this letter. It doesn't even matter if you're a scrawny little weed or whatever you are. That's just disgusting behaviour. You don't make parents fearful for their children's safety. You shouldn't be doing anything to children. So like that's the part where I would get angry, and then I'd be like, right, I'd be looking at every neighbour and I wouldn't trust any of them, and I'd be the village arsehole till I got the truth. I really would. You can't let people talk about your kids like that. End of story. The envelope had no return address. Who am I? The person wrote. There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. The letter concluded with a suggestion that this message would not be the last. Welcome, my friends, welcome. Let the party begin. Followed by a signature typed in a cursive font, The Watcher. Now, that's just, I don't know. I don't know whether, like, is this just a seriously weird, sinister person that should be concerned about, or is this just one dumbass prank for attention that's gone too far? And the thing is, what's scary is this person's been anonymous. Yeah, and that, I mean, if teenagers would have done that, that satisfaction would have burnt out pretty quick. You know, there would have been a line where it's not funny no more. But this person's like, there's no line. There really is no line. He crossed it in the first letter, and there doesn't seem to be no line. And why would he be doing it for attention when nobody knows who the fuck he is? We don't even know if it's a he. I keep referring to it as a guy. We don't even know. It was after 10 p.m. and Derek Broadus was alone. He raced around the house, turning off lights so no one could see inside. Then called the Westfield Police Department. An officer came to the house, read the letter and said, "What the fuck is this?" He asked Derek if he had enemies and recommend moving a piece of construction equipment from the back porch in case the Watcher tried to toss it through a window. I mean, when the police officer says, "What the fuck is this?" and then tells you to move certain things so nobody can break your window, I mean, that doesn't make you feel any better, does it? You don't feel like you've got a good service that night, for real. Derek rushed back to his wife and kids, who were living at their old home elsewhere in Westfield. That night, Derek and Maria wrote an email to John and Andrea Woods, the couple who sold them 657 Boulevard, to ask if they had any idea who the Watcher might be or why he or she had written, "I asked the Woods to bring me young blood and it looks like they listened." I mean, it's a strange thing to say, you know. I mean, it's just such a bizarre claim, but you'd still have to ask, wouldn't you? Because you're getting all these letters, and like you're thinking, right, this person's saying that they've been doing this, you know, their family. It's a family tree. It's a family thing. It's a family business. Sending these letters, and then I don't know. And then they're saying, "Oh, well, I asked the Woods. It looks like they listened." As if like the Woods like deliberately sold them a house because they had kids and their job was to bring young blood. This just such a bizarre story to me. Andrea Woods replied the next morning, a few days before moving out. The Woodses had also received a letter from the Watcher. The note had been odd, she said, and made similar mention of the Watcher's family observing the house over time. But Andrea said she and her husband had never received anything like it in their 23 years in the house, and had thrown the letter away without too much fault that day. The Woodses went with Maria to the police station, where Detective Leonard Lugo told her not to tell anyone about the letters, including her neighbours, most of whom she had never met, and all of whom were now suspects. I mean, give me 1 second, guys. I mean, how could you trust any of your neighbours? This is, I mean, you probably sit there and think, oh no, I would never let someone that, like, weird like that ruin your new home and new life and all that stuff. But how would you be able to, you know, socialise with your environment, you know, and other people, if you don't know who this fucker is? You'd be looking at everyone. The Broaduses spent the coming weeks on high alert. Derek cancelled a work trip, and whenever Maria took the kids to their new house, she would yell their names, and if they wandered into a corner of the yard. When Derek gave a tour of the renovation to a couple on the block, he froze when his wife said it would be nice to have some young blood in the neighbourhood. The Broaduses' general contractor arrived one morning to find that a heavy sign he'd hammered into the front yard had been ripped out overnight. 2 weeks after the letter arrived, Maria stopped by the house to look at some paint samples and check the mail. She recognised the thick black lettering on a card-shaped envelope and called the police. "Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard," the Watcher wrote. "The workers have been busy and I have been watching you unload carefuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will." Now, I've heard this story many times, and I don't know, like, you would check the walls. I mean, they must have checked the walls. You must have thought, shit, man, is this dude, like, really psycho and he's hid bodies in here or something? You really don't know. I mean, the whole thing is weird. The whole thing gets so weird. This time, the Watcher had addressed Derek and Maria directly, misspelling their names as Mr. and Mrs. Bradus. Had the Watcher been close enough to hear one of the Broaduses' contractors addressing them? So, yeah, I mean, that's you'd even look at the contractors then, wouldn't you? I mean, neighbour, you know, close neighbour, or is somebody like sneaking around the side of the house, or, you know, listening over the garden fence and shit? You don't know. The Watcher boasted of having learned a lot about the family in the preceding weeks. Before I go on, it is 2014. So we did have the internet, we did have Facebook, we did have Instagram, we did have Google Maps, we did have Street View. We had pretty much similar means then as we did now. I mean, not much. I mean, I know a lot's changed, but in terms of what we have access to, 2014 and now are very much the same. So, is it really crazy that that this person had the ability to find out nitty-gritty details? So, So the Watcher boasted about having learned a lot about the family in the preceding weeks, especially about the children. The letter identified the Broaduses' 3 kids by birth order and their nicknames, the ones Maria had been yelling. "I am pleased to know your names now and the name of the young blood you have brought me," it said. "You certainly say their names often." The letter asked about one child in particular, whom the writer had seen using an easel inside an enclosed porch. "Is she the artist in the family?" the letter continued. I mean, I mean, I remember this part coming up when I watched this story on YouTube. I remember when it got to this part, and I think what they were saying is that you would have to have been somewhere on the property, not inside the house, but somewhere, you know, either, you know, down the side of the properties. You had to have been on the land to have been able to see the little girl playing with the easel. The police, I think the police looked at the, you know, where she was playing with the easel, and then looked at where you would have a visual of that, and you would have to have been remarkably close. And not just that, if this person is getting remarkably close, that would explain how he overheard the surnames that they had and what they was doing, and, you know, the kids' names, everybody's names. It just explains a lot. So the letter continued, 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Ugh. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the watcher, and have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on, and kindly sold it when I asked them to. See, it's no wonder that, you know, that you're sitting there thinking, I've got to ask the Woods family about this, and they're going to think I'm crazy, unless they've been getting these letters as well and they kept their mouth shut. But as we know, they only got one. They got one a few weeks before the house was sold to them. So, like, they'd been there for 23 years and got none of this shit. So that's what leads me to believe this is just some angry neighbour on some weird tangent and may need, you know, may need things addressed. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Baldur's family, or Bradders family as he wrote. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching. I mean, first thing I'm doing is I'm getting a Ring doorbell and CCTV around the house. And I do think they did go through some security system in the end, Derek and Maria. I mean, it's the way the guy's writing. It's like he's like some medieval fucking, like, I don't know what he's trying to be, but, you know, I'm almost reading it in almost like a Roald Dahl sort of novel type thing going on. I mean, this person he's really trying his best to seem, I don't know, scary, but it's not scary. It's creepy. It's weird. It's like not quite fear. It's more gravely concerned and on high alert. It's anxiety provoking, definitely. Derek and Maria stopped bringing their kids to the house. They were no longer sure when or if they would move in. Several weeks later, a third letter arrived. Where have you gone to? The watcher wrote. 657 Boulevard is missing you. So straight away he's aware that they're just sort of keeping their distance now. Many Westfield residents compare their town to Mayberry, the idyllic setting for the Andy Griffith Show, the kind of place where a new neighbour might greet you with a welcoming note. Westfield is 45 minutes from New York and a bit too slow for singles, meaning the town's 30,000 residents are largely well-to-do families. This year, Bloomberg ranked Westfield the 99th richest city in America, but only the 18th wealthiest in New Jersey. And in 2014, when the Watcher struck, the website Neighbourhood Scout named it the country's 30th safest town. The most pressing local issues of late, according to residents, have been the temporary closure of Trader Joe's after a roof collapse and a rampant scourge of unconditional policing, by which they mean aggressive parking enforcement. Westfield is 86% white. Now, I don't know why Westfield being 86% white would be like, I mean, that's just, I just don't understand why you'd need to say that. I mean, what? So if it was 86% black, would it not be any of those things you just said? Like, it just, I hate it when it, so whoever wrote that bit might be old. One activity all locals recognise as treacherous is trying to buy a house. There's a lot of money and a lot of ego, one resident who requested anonymity before discussing Westfield real estate told me. I've seen bidding wars where friends lost by 300 grand. The Broadus' house was on the Boulevard, a wide tree-lined street with some of the more desirable homes in town. As the Watcher had noted, the Boulevard used to be the street to live on. You made it if you lived on the Boulevard. Built in 1905, 657 Boulevard was perhaps the grandest home on the block, and when the Woodses put it on the market, they had received multiple offers above their asking price. That led the Broaduses to initially suspect that the Watcher might be someone upset over losing out on the house. This is what makes more sense. But the Woodses said one interested buyer had backed out after a bad medical diagnosis, while another had already found a different home. In an email to the Broaduses, Andrew Woods proposed another theory. Would the mention of the contractor trucks and your children suggest that it was someone in the neighbourhood? The letters did indicate proximity. They had been processed in Kearney, the US Postal Service Distribution Centre in northern New Jersey. The first was postmarked June 4th. Before the sale was public, the Woodses had never put up a for sale sign, and only a day after the contractors arrived, the renovations were mostly interior. And people who lived nearby say they didn't notice an unusual commotion, even from the jackhammering in the basement. When Derek and Maria walked Detective Lugo around the house, they showed him that the easel on the porch was hidden from the street by vegetation, making it difficult to see unless someone was behind the house or right next door. See, again, like, it's all pointing to the neighbours, man. A few days after the first letter, Maria and Derek went to a barbecue across the street, welcoming them and another new homeowner to the block. The Broaduses hadn't told anyone about the Watcher, as the police had instructed, and found themselves scanning the party for clues while keeping tabs on their kids, who ran guidelessly through the crowd that made up much of the suspect pool. We kept screaming at them to stay close, Maria said. People must have thought we're crazy. Yeah, but, I mean, not really, because you still don't know any of these people, and you just moved in, you've been invited to a party, your kids are running around some random garden. These people you didn't know a little while ago. Like, you know, it's not like you went to school with any of these people. These are strangers still. So you're still going to be, not just that, you don't want your kids upsetting the property owners, do you know what I mean? So you just want to keep, they're your kids, keep them under control. They're doing the right thing. I don't think they look crazy. I just think they're good parents. Thank you. So I ain't got to tell them. At one point, Derek was chatting with John Schmidt, who lived 2 doors down, when Schmidt told him about the Langfords, who lived between them. Penny Langford was in her 90s, and several of her adult children, all in their 60s, lived with her. The family was a bit odd, Schmidt said, but harmless. He described one of the younger Langfords, Michael, who didn't work and had a beard like Ernest Hemingway, as kind of a Boo Radley character. Derek thought the case was solved. The Langford house was right next to the easel on the porch. The family had lived there since the 1960s, when the watcher's father, the letters said to have begun observing 657 Boulevard. Richard Langford, the family patriarch, had died 12 years earlier, and the current watcher claimed to have been on the job for the better part of 2 decades. When the Broaduses told Lugo about the family, he said he already knew, and a week after the first letter arrived, he brought Michael Langford to police headquarters for an interview. Michael denied knowing anything about the letters, but the Broaduses say that Lugo told them that the narrative of what he said matched things mentioned in the letters. This isn't CSI Westfield, Lugo later told the Broaduses. When the wife is dead, it's the husband. But there wasn't much hard evidence, and after a few weeks the police chief told the Broaduses that short of an admission, there wasn't much the department could do. This is someone who threatened my kids, and the police are saying probably nothing's going to happen, Derek said. Probably isn't good enough for me. After the second letter, Derek told the cops that if they didn't take care of the situation, they would have different kind of case on their hands. This person attacked my family, and where I'm from, if you do that, you get your ass beat, Derek told me. Frustrated, the Broaduses began their own investigation. Derek became especially obsessed. He set up webcams in 657 Boulevard and spent nights crouched in the dark. I would have done that from the get-go. Watching to see if anyone was watching the house at close range. Maria thought I was crazy. He told me recently at the coffee shop in Manhattan, where he covered a table with documents relating to the case, including copies of the letters, which he and his wife had shared with only a few friends and family members. He showed me a map displaying when each of 657's neighbours had moved in. The Langfords were the only ones there since the 60s, with overlays marking possible sight lines for the easel and a circle for approximate range of earshot to estimate who might have heard Maria yelling their kids' names. Only a few homes fit both criteria. See, again, guys, this story is just, it gets weirder and weirder and weirder, and that's why I'm going to have to do it in 2 parts. So I will upload the second part tomorrow, and but let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think of this so far, and then when I upload part 2 tomorrow, I will send you the link to this article so you can go and read it for yourselves in your own time. But I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and make sure you're back for part 2 where I'll read the rest of it. And for now, you guys have been in the Sleuth booth.